I'm going to explain the old world interpretation of reality. Okay, now they did a study, I think back in the 50s. I was told about this. I don't know if it's true or not, but they took a bunch of children and they raised them without educations and they put them in a community together. And they noticed that within a few hours, you know, they were coming up with fantastic ideas of how nature functions. You know, I mean, they were talked to. You know, they had conversations, but they never learned anything. They never were taught about religion or science or any of those things. They were just kind of raised with really old world values, but in a secular manner. You they weren't raised with any kind of moral stance. You know, and they noticed that even as children they were real abusive to one another and all those things because they're ignorant. You they would come up with a belief and they would say that it was a concrete knowledge because they observed it that way. They saw it that way. The moon is a big happy face. Remember the man on the moon, and you look at it and you see a face on the moon, kind of, if you look at it in the right perspective. Looks kind of like a dude looking off and whatever. You can see features, kind of a facial feature, because that's what we look for. That's what we look for, patterns and stuff. And we look for reassurances, things like that. It's kind of a so you think about it, right? And these people were uneducated back in like 2, 3, 4,000 years ago. They didn't have like real complex sciences like quantum theory. You know, they didn't, which are simple actually if you think about it. They're more simple than the fantastic explanations that Christians come up with. You so the ideas that they had, about nature and stuff. Where lightning only struck heathens, but we know for a fact that it strikes trees and dirt and shit. So, and houses and all sorts of things. It doesn't just strike the houses of the heathens either. It strikes, you know, Christian establishments. And it's not because they've strayed from the message either. You have this idea that this all-powerful all-knowing being that's so merciful and moral would have to sacrifice anything. If he's that powerful to bring everything into existence, and he's so vain that he says, "Believe in me or go to hell." That's not really the idea of a God you want to follow, is it? He's forceful. He says, "Well, okay. You have this free will over here, and over here you have this ultimatum. An ultimatum abates free will. Anytime there's a plan, it abates free will. A plan is usually when you control an environment to get your the optimum result for you. Science doesn't work that way. Science is a system of trials and errors. The first science in the world, the very first science that you can think of, was basically, textile, making things like ropes and spears and stuff. And then there was also right alongside that the agricultural sciences, which were starting to develop. Just out of people, putting two and two together and seeing that a seed grows into a tree. Maybe they even watched, older older versions of ourselves, Neanderthals, You know, Neanderthals actually being a cousin species and not really our ancestor. You know, Homo erectus and stuff like that. You know, like they were creatures, man, that did all sorts of things that were, you know, like us, that figured things out. You know, I'm sure because spears go way, way back. You know, they go back to our, you know, paleontological path. Um, you know, we are a natural species, um, but we have figured out how to act unnaturally. Um, these, you know, monkeys store fruit, you know, but those are monkeys. We're primates, and there is a difference. The difference between a primate and a monkey is that a monkey has a tail. You know, so that's a little fact, of course. If you don't like it, then don't like it. Well, at least that's what we label a fact. We don't know what else to call it other than the words that we can convey between one another. That doesn't mean that we're, you know, we know something. What that means is that we've observed it. Now, you can observe fantastic ideas. There was this guy, and I talked about him before, Andrew Womack. He's like this, you know, charlatan. Guys like him, you know, they just, you know, they want the attention so, you know, so much. They need it so badly. You know, they need this attention. Like, they come up with these fantastic claims which aren't backed up by any kind of outside source, you know, because they're word of mouth, you know, and the people think that they're being honest because they're behind this podium. They're up above them. Have you ever noticed that the podium, to get to the podium, you have to walk up steps? That elevates you to a status above everyone else. I know this because I'm a stand-up comedian, and I have to do that. So, um, you know, I'm kind of new at it, so I don't even have a name, you know, but I like being indefinitely unemployed too, so that's why I chose the profession. Anyways, like getting off the, you know, that being aside, the point there. You know, people are just, I mean, if you can call a man a liar, and you know he's lying, but you can't like prove that somebody else wasn't lying because you weren't there, is not an argument. You know, it's like saying, oh well, Timmy said 5 years ago that he could lift a truck. It doesn't mean that he could lift a truck. He might be able to do it with a lift of some sort, but not with his own, you know, strength. You know, that's fallacy. That's called, it's a lie. You know. Or it's a twisting of a fact. Maybe if you took this uneducated child to you know like a garage, right? And you see this lift going up, but nobody's ever explained to you what it is. And you see a guy underneath it with his hands underneath. He's working on something. You don't understand exactly what he's doing, but you see him. It looks to you like he's lifting things. So, you know, that's just something that, you know, is not a real observation. And we know that. You know, we should know that anyway. Um, just people who are uninformed, people who don't have a connection with, you know, scientific theory. You know, they don't have any kind of like real understanding of anything, you know, because they think they know something else, and that kind of blocks like their connection with their critical function. You know, they're not able to criticize themselves because they have themselves on a lower podium than the preacher above them. You know, it's kind of sad, really. You know, I can't say that my life is the best life, and but I don't pray for it to be any better because you know I work for my future. You know, I write my jokes and I tell them on a stage in front of hundreds of people. You know, I had 250 people the other night, you know, and as scary as that was, you know, I still did a good job. You know, or at least I think I did. I mean, everybody else has been calling me and just giving me accolades, you know, and I'm glad for it. And I thank them, you know, humbly. I thank them. And I'm not trying to brag about it, but it feels good to know that people think that highly of me. You know, that's cool. And, you know, and I applaud them for still being alive and doing the things that they're doing. The, you know, and I wish them, you know, I give them that, you know, I hope that they have a fruitful life, you know, and all those things. But that doesn't mean that I have to, like, agree with their religious beliefs, but they're my friends. You know, they don't care what I believe, and they'll have those conversations with me. My friends are usually intelligent people. I don't really hang out with too many dummies, you know, because I'm a dummy myself, and I'd rather, um, you know, have like you know, surround myself with smart people so that, not so I can appear smart myself, but so I can learn something, and I can have conversations with other people and be able to connect with them on a different level. I talk to everybody, dude. You know, there's not one person I will neglect a conversation. You know, because you can learn something from anyone. You know, not just some fabled character. You can't learn from that. You know, those stances, and if you really look at it, there's very few abject moral lessons in the Bible. Yeah, killing is immoral. Thou shalt not kill. That's fine. Or murder is the original translation or the original meaning of that word. You know, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, which is like, you know, wanting to take her. You shouldn't, because that's kind of rude, man. You know, but you know, the rest, there's a lot of it that's not. You know, you have this vain God telling me, "Thou shalt not worship anything before me." You know, I'm you know, the bee's knees, and if you don't pay attention, I'm gonna strike you down. You know, but I love you. Oh man, that's so funny. I love you so much. I'm gonna abandon you and never answer your prayers or do any of those things. You know, and you know, I'm gonna love you so much that I'm gonna let preachers who, you know, inject their opinion and talk about themselves, control people. You know, it's not a very loving God. You know, I can't call myself an atheist, but I can say that if I do have a God, it's a deeply personal one, and it really doesn't mean anything. It's not important. You know, as Zen Master Dogen said in the 16th century, he said, uh, he said to this regent who was kind of crazy, you know, like a mayor, you know, sort of, and he was real brutal about pushing the emperor's values. So he would cut people's heads off and kill them, and he would see their ghosts, and they would torment him. And Dogen, Zen Master Dogen, says to him, he says, you know, you're clinging to your position of power, and you're clinging to the abilities that you have with this power, and it eats at you inside, you know, and you have this guilt, but you refuse to acknowledge it, you know, and it's eating you. And whatever gods or demons that you have are ultimately your own. You know, even that's exactly what Siddhartha Gautama said. You know, that those things that you believe really are unimportant. You know, this is a sensual world that we live in. Sensual meaning five senses. Again, I will say that. One, two, three, four, five. You know, that's like you know, sight, touch, hearing, taste, and smell. You can't refute your senses, but you can refute what you believe if you're critical of yourself. You know, because belief is not a knowing. You know, you don't know anything because you believe it. Like I said before, I can accept a lie. Does not mean I have to believe it. You know, I had this discussion earlier with somebody. They say to me, you know, I believe the whole thing. You know, I said, well, what do you see God's moral stance as being? Well, I see him as being good. Well, I said, is it because he's the all-knowing, omnipotent creator? And she said, yes. And I said, well, that's kind of, you know, it's kind of unrealistic, right? You know, that's not a stance. That's not an argument. What that is basically dodging the argument. Well, who created your God? Well, God was already there. That's not an argument either, because you can't demonstrate physical nature of God. You know, if God is this being that can actually put his hands on people and create like avatars, or whatever you want to call it, you know, like Jesus, you know, then surely he can come down and prove it, or you can bring this physical nature of God to us, you know, and you can prove, you know, a lot of the fallacious claims that you make, you know, like something that's not backed up by any kind of secular outside source. You know, most of the time when you see like theistic news is when it's on like CTN, Christian Television Network, you know, and all they do is show everything from a theistic point of view. If there's a miracle, they only show it from the theistic point of view, but they don't have any secular documentation because most of the secular sources won't go near fallacious claims, and when they do investigate it. By the way, they find that it's a hoax. They find that it's either a hoax or it's kind of a coincidental natural phenomenon. You know, like visage of Mary on a window in on a building in Tampa. Uh, it looks like, you know, when they examine what it is, it's just rust. You know, iron and soap, built up soap and stuff like that running down the window got kind of stained into the surface because there is grooves in glass, even though it feels smooth. You just can't see it. It's not visible. Like atoms are not visible, but we can tell they've been there. I mean, we have proof that they've been there. Something called quarks. I'm sure you probably have heard of them, but you probably refute science altogether anyway, because it's the devil's work. You know, so you're thinking about like things like, you know, like these people were abreast of modern science, you know, as if they were like, you know, like primitive man, you know, or when we were in our infant stages as our current form, you know, because there's one stage just before us, Homo sapiens archaic, I think it's called, or something like that, or I can't remember, but they didn't have, you know, we didn't have knowledge either. You know, we hadn't like developed a science. We hadn't like even figured out math until, you know, it took like 1,000 years to develop real quantitative values. You know, you have like You know, it probably took a lot longer than that. It probably took like 50, 60,000 years. You know, we didn't have a value for zero until like what 1,500 years ago or something like that. Like a true value for zero. A little longer than 1,500 years ago. You know, we didn't. You know, a value for zero. You know, maybe zero's been around for about 3 or 4, maybe 5,000 years, but it wasn't with us before that. Mm, because we could never picture something without nothing. But now we can. Um, it's just a matter of time. Now I can't argue that as being fact though. You know, but what I can say is that I accept those arguments as being more uh, cohesive with reality. But you know, that's pretty much all I've got for you today, or this time around anyway. So if you've listened to this, thank you very much, and you have a beautiful day.